Hello and welcome back to the show. Today we are talking about how to overcome self doubt without journaling, without endless affirmations, and without reading another personal development book. So, we're really talking about a subject that everyone struggles with at some point, self doubt. But I know sometimes when we talk about these concepts, you can be like, Kim, I have tried everything. Like I've tried doing journaling, I've tried doing affirmations. Like it feels like it's not shifting anything. And I totally get it. That is frustrating. The ironic thing about self-doubt and also like its cousin, I would say imposter syndrome is often the better you are at something, the more you experience it, which is kind of ironic because you think that, like, if I'm better at something, I'm going to feel less doubt about it. But the reason this happens is because the more experience you have and the more you know about something, the more you realize what you don't know and the more you realize how far there is to go. And sometimes when you are a complete beginner or you're new to something, you don't really realize how much you don't know what you don't know. And there's actually, like, in psychology, it's called the Dunning-Kruger's effect, which is often like the less competent people are more confident, and the more confident people are struggling more because they know what they don't know. So if you are feeling doubt about what you're doing or you're feeling like a little bit of imposter syndrome, like I want you to know, like, just because you feel this way, it's not actually always a genuine reflection of how much skill you have or how good you are or aren't. Sometimes it's more just like you need to change the way you feel about yourself and then keep improving your skills. Of course, like this isn't to say like your skills don't matter, but if the way that you feel about yourself and your capabilities, it's going to go so much further to shifting that self-doubt. Or even when you have that self-doubt, you're able to sort of like move through it, because I think a lot of the time success comes from being able to move with discomfort, with fear, with being able to be like, you know what, I feel really like not confident about this right now, but I'm going to keep doing it anyways. And I think that's the thing that we get wrong, is we think that discomfort means that we should move away from something. And of course, like this is said with the caveat, like if you're in an unsafe situation or something, of course, move away from that. But I more so mean like when you're working towards your goals, it's usually not comfortable. And there, if you are getting comfortable, you're probably getting complacent, or it's like you're so much of entrepreneurship is creating something that's never existed before. And so you're going to have to create something where there isn't necessarily always a framework for it. And there isn't necessarily like a plan of like you do this, and then you're going to get this. So it really becomes more about like, can you find a way to move through the discomfort? Can you find a way to make moves even though you don't feel comfortable? Can you find a way to keep going even though you are experiencing that self doubt? So the reason that a lot of these tools, like just journaling on it or trying to recite affirmations over and over and being like, I am confident, I am this, like the reason that these sometimes don't work, or they feel like they take a lot of effort and then you kind of, in moments of stress or when you're really struggling, they kind of fall by the wayside and they feel like they're not really doing anything for you. The reason that this is because these tools are really working at the level of your conscious mind. So you have your conscious mind, you have your unconscious mind. Sometimes I say subconscious. I sort of use the terms interchangeably, but it's almost like I want you to imagine like an iceberg, and you can see the top of the iceberg, and that's your conscious mind. Like it's just a little tiny bit of it. And then your subconscious is really the rest of the iceberg underneath. That's what's running the show. And so when you're just interfacing with the top of that iceberg or the top of like your conscious mind, you're not really getting to the depth of why things are going on. Your subconscious mind has literally been programmed like since before you were born. Sometimes I have clients, when we do sessions, they go back to being in the womb and they'll like hear something that was said, or they kind of get like a general vibe or a feeling, because when you're that young, sometimes maybe language doesn't always make sense, but you can feel what the people are feeling. And that starts to program your mind. And this really happens between like the ages of 0 to 7 years old. You're basically in a subconscious state all the time, and your brain is downloading all this information about how to be in the world. It's almost like your computer programming, if you want to think about it that way. And if you don't do anything to upgrade the software, then you're going to keep playing out those same beliefs that you created from the ages of 0 to 7 years old. And often, as it is with kids or like children, the way that you saw the world is maybe not actually necessarily how things were. So you created these beliefs from that childlike perspective, and then you're still playing out those beliefs as an adult. And one thing that actually comes up for a lot of people is when they are struggling with confidence or they feel like they're doubting themselves, a lot of the time they'll go back to like that childhood experience of like wanting to do something that like it's just literally maybe their body isn't big enough to do it. Like maybe they want to reach something that's on the top shelf and they can't do it. So it creates this learned helplessness of like, I want to, but no matter how hard I try, I can't. And that feeling and that belief, it embeds itself in them. And then they're still playing out that same belief. And it's like, you're an adult now, you're tall enough to reach the top shelf. You can grab a ladder, a chair, a stool, whatever. You can get someone else to do it for you. You're not that child anymore. But to your subconscious mind, it's still playing out that belief of like, no, I can't do this, or I can't do this for myself. I need someone else to do it for me. And the way your mind works is like whatever you believe, you keep putting it out into the world, gathering more evidence to support it, and then it just becomes like this cycle that it's kind of I'm seeing like a closed loop, like it just keeps going around and around. So when you want to shift those feelings, like that feeling of self-doubt or like that doubt in your capabilities, you have to go to the subconscious mind. So really that is step 2, is like doing the subconscious work, whether that is self-hypnosis, whether that's RTT, whether that's like EFT tapping. Basically, you want to get to the root of the issue of like, where did this start? What was going on? What were those beliefs that I created? Like I was telling you, like that child, what did they believe about themselves when they couldn't reach the thing at the top of the cupboard? And then you have to address that and show that childlike version of you. Be like, hey, I'm however many years old now. I can reach the top of the cupboard. That might have been true for you then. It's not true for you anymore. And when you can do that on a subconscious level and you can show your mind like, hey, that's not actually true anymore, I can choose to believe something else, then that's when you shift it on a subconscious level. And then it almost is like upgrading your computer system or upgrading your software system. You're getting rid of the old belief, you're putting in the new belief. And then from there on, you're free to act in a new way because your subconscious mind is not trying to hold you back with that original belief that you had. And so one of the things that I wanted to share with you is how the whole reason that I became an RTT therapist was I used to be a photographer, started my photography business when I was like 17 or 18 years old. And I felt like I really struggled because I had the talent. People were telling me I was talented, like I had the skills, but I just felt like I was constantly like missing the mark a little bit. Like I felt really weird about what I was charging. I always like really doubted myself a lot in my ability to really succeed in what I was trying to do. So when I did that first RTT session, I really wanted to understand, like, why do I feel so blocked around this? Like, why do I feel like this is such a challenge? Like, I have everything I technically need. I know all the things. I know what to do. Why am I still missing the mark? So when I did that first RTT session, we got to the root cause of I had a belief that like the whole starving artist thing, basically, like you can't make a living doing what you love. You can't be successful at it. Like artists don't make money. So you can see how it's like having a subconscious belief like that was causing it to play out in over and over in my life. Like, yeah, this is going to be hard because on a subconscious level, I believed that it was going to be hard. So the other thing that really, I think, trips people up when it comes to self-doubt is their self-worth. So basically, when you want to achieve something, but you don't feel on a subconscious level that you're worthy of having that goal, you will either just like not reach it, even though you're working really, really hard on it, or you will achieve it and you'll get rid of it really quickly because it feels really weird for you to have it. So, the other part of the picture that really needs to change is feeling worthy of having whatever it is that you want. You have to make it feel so comfortable and feel so normal to your nervous system. Like, of course, I would have this thing. Because if you don't feel worthy of it, you're going to get rid of it really quickly because the mind hates the unfamiliar and it loves the familiar. So, if what's familiar to you is like the self doubt, the low self worth, like situations where you feel like you're settling, like not having good boundaries, people pleasing, if that's what feels familiar, it's going to feel really hard, if not impossible, for you to show up in a different way because your subconscious self-worth just doesn't support it. And one of the ways that I wanted to share with you that you can really address doing this on a subconscious level is one of my evergreen programs, which is Inner Worth, which basically walks you through 7 days of different exercises that you can do to up-level your self-worth, but it also takes you through a self-paced RTT session for self-worth, feeling good enough, and then there's a 21-day hypnosis recording to listen to embed those new beliefs in. So it's like a really easy, accessible way to start doing this work right now. And because it's evergreen, it's open all the time. And I've had people go through it who have also worked with me one-on-one, and they said like they got to the things that they needed to get to shift the beliefs. And like, while it won't be as personalized to maybe your specific situation as if we were to work together in an RTT session one-to-one, I think if you just want to get started on doing this work right now and really get to the root cause of being like, why don't I feel like I'm enough? Like, why does this feel so hard? Like, why don't I feel worthy of my goals? This is an amazing place to start. So I will pop that in the show notes. You can get started on it right now. And you can take the 7 days to move through the modules, or you can take longer. It's totally up to you. I think sometimes we really put a premium on people getting through information and content as fast as possible. I don't always think this is the best way to embody it. I think sometimes it's like, if you're wanting to shift things, it's like, work on one thing for a little bit until you really feel like you've mastered that particular skill, and then move on to the next thing instead of just trying to like breeze through it and then being like, okay, now what? Because then it's like you're not really taking it in, you're just getting through it to do it. And like, I've done that too. Like, I have definitely gone through a lot of courses where it was on like 2x speed and I was like, okay, I finished it now, and now what? But it's like you're not really embodying the information or the practices doing it that way. And step 3 is really cultivating an empowering mindset. I think the difference between a positive mindset and an empowering mindset is like, sometimes we can get really wrapped up in the idea of a positive mindset, meaning that you have to be positive all the time, which is impossible as a human. And then it creates like this whole expectation that you need to like just be positive about everything all of the time, and that feels like this impossible task, and then you start to feel guilty because you can't do it. So I really have lately been preferring to use an empowering mindset, because an empowering mindset acknowledges that while maybe you don't feel great 100% of the time, because you're human and that would be weird and not like, it's an impossible standard. Like, what makes life interesting is the variety of feelings you can feel. If you just always felt good and that was it would become very boring, I think. I think the interesting thing about this reality is the duality you can experience. Like, how do you know you like something until you don't like something? You need that contrast. So when I say cultivate an empowering mindset, I think that's more about how you choose to show up no matter what the situation is. And while there's a lot of ways we can do this, the first one I always want to leave with everyone. It's so simple, and I feel like people just don't do it because it almost sounds too simple or it sounds too hard. And maybe they do it for a little bit and then they fall out of practice. But I'm like, whatever you do, if you just shift this one thing, like, you will completely change how you feel about yourself. Even if you don't do anything else, if you never listen to another podcast, if you just walk away and like commit to changing this one thing, it will change how you feel about yourself. And that's like minding your self-talk. I see so many people going around and being like, oh, I'm such an idiot, or I'm this, or like, of course I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. And your mind is listening to you all the time, and it's just feeding you back evidence to prove you right. So even if you're joking, your mind doesn't hear joking. It just hears what you tell it. So like really being mindful of what you say about yourself. Like instead of being like, oh, I'm such an idiot, of course that happened, you can be like, oh, like that was a bit silly, but I'll do better next time. And if at first you're like, but then how I'm just letting myself run rampant and just be bad at everything. No, that's not what we're saying. You can't shame someone into being better. I think a lot of people have tried. It doesn't work. Like we do better when we feel good about ourselves and we believe that we deserve more. So changing this one thing, changing how you talk about yourself, like talk about yourself as if you were a small child again. Like if you wouldn't say it to your best friend or a 5-year-old, you shouldn't be saying it to yourself. And I try not to tell people that they shouldn't be doing things because I think it just brings up a lot of resistance at times. But I believe like if you just change this one thing, this will change so much in your life. The next one is really speaking in the affirmative of what you do want. A lot of the times I will do client intake forms and they'll be like, I don't want this, and I don't want this, and I don't want this. And I'll be like, okay, well, that's good that you know what you don't want, but what do you want? Because in the same sense that your mind doesn't hear when you're joking about things, your mind also doesn't understand things in the negative. So if you say, I don't want shitty clients, then your mind doesn't have a picture of what does that look like. Your mind really speaks through the feelings and the pictures, the visuals that you make about things. So when you tell it, I don't want this, your mind is like, so you want more of that? So it's kind of more like you need to be like, okay, this is what I do want. I want clients that are responsive, respectful of my boundaries, appreciate what I do. Like, even just thinking about that makes you feel so much better than being like, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. And so it's like really showing your mind like strong pictures or evocative feelings of like, what do I want to feel? How do I want things to look? The next one is really like, okay, if something is happening and it's maybe not your first choice as to what was happening, asking yourself like, okay, if this was happening for me, like what can I learn here? What can I take from this situation? Even if the only thing you're taking away is like, this is not what I like. I've realized I like this. That's still something you can learn. And it really takes you out of that state of being like, oh, why is everything bad happening to me? Like, this isn't working. This is shit, blah, blah, blah. And you're not trying to be like Pollyanna about it. Be like, oh my God, everything is sunshine and roses, even though my life is going to shit. Like, that's not what we're trying to do either. Instead, we're trying to be realistic and be like, okay, like this is the situation. If this is happening for me in some kind of a way, what can I take out of this? Like, how can I make this a learning moment? And the last thing that I really wanted to share with you is like when that voice of self-doubt comes up, or like that inner critic, or that voice that you hear in your head that's telling you you can't do it or whatever, it's going to happen. You're human. It's natural. We're not trying to control our thoughts. We're trying to be the observer of our thoughts. But when that voice comes up, I really like to dialogue and be like, okay, like whose voice is this? Where did I learn this? Where did this come from? Who spoke to me in this way? And if you can identify that it's coming from a specific person, be like, well, do I really want their advice about this? Like, have they tried to do this before? Were they successful at it? And if not, or if it's just something that doesn't make you feel good, be like, okay, well, thanks for your input, but this is what we're choosing to think about instead. Because I think you'll find like that voice comes from somewhere. It's learned. So if you've learned it, that means you can unlearn it as well. So just having that moment of pause of being like, okay, like whose voice actually is this? So yes, I hope this was helpful. Just to recap quickly, the first thing you really want to do is like acknowledging the self-doubt when it comes up, instead of trying to just push it away or be like, I don't believe that, or like try and affirm it with something that you really don't believe, because that doesn't really work. Like, I think everyone has had the experience of trying to say affirmations of things that really are not landing and you're like, this just feels weird. So acknowledging it, acknowledging when the self-doubt is coming up, or like the imposter syndrome. The next one is really doing the subconscious reprogramming, getting to the root cause of like, where did this come from? What was going on then? What did it make me believe about myself? Joining inner worth if you feel like it's a fit and you feel aligned to do that. And then the third one is really cultivating an empowering mindset, like cultivating a mindset that's like, you know what, like this might be the situation, but here's how I'm going to move through it. Here's how this is working out for me. Here's how I can handle this because of X, Y, Z. So I hope this episode was helpful for you. As always, I love to hear your feedback. Please feel free to send me a message on Instagram. I'm at kim.akrigg over there. And that's it from me for today.